The Kroot are a humanoid species of Xenos. They appear throughout the galaxy but are most frequently associated with the Tau Empire. Biology and appearance. The Kroot originated in the world of Pek and, though their physiology is humanoid, there is evidence to suggest that the roots of their evolution may be avian in origin. They retain vestigial beaks and have a light, almost hollow bone structure, with 4 digits on each hand and foot. Their skin is rough with small, barbed spines, similar to the elongated quills on their heads, protruding from various locations on their flesh. Skin pigmentation ranges from earthy brown colors and dappled greens to vibrant oranges and everything in between. Depending on the feeding directions of the Kroot shapers, the coloration of each kindred can vary quite considerably. It is also common for Kroot from each kindred to have particular tribal markings painted onto their skin. Kroot mature quickly, with their most rapid period of growth occurring in the first 10 years of their lives. By the age of 12, they are considered adults, and it is not unknown for Kroot to live to over 100 years old, their skin becoming increasingly pitted and leathery in their last few years of life. Kroot are tall and their bodies have a wiriness to them that appears deceptively fragile. In actuality, Kroot musculature is extremely powerful and composed of dense fiber spindles with a greater power-to-mass ratio than is found in humans. Swift muscle contractions create a whiplash effect, allowing the Kroot to deliver powerful blows with great rapidity. On the ground, the Kroot tend to move with a bounding, hopping gait, but in dense forests, they can spring from tree to tree at great speed. The Kroot favor primitive garb, harnesses worked from the hides of animals and adorned with bones, handcrafted amulets, and circles. The limited specimens that have been made available for study are found to have brains composed of a front and rear hemisphere. It appears that the larger, frontal hemisphere controls the functions of logic, reasoning, and memory, while the rear, less developed hemisphere is more attuned to imagination and creativity. If this is indeed the case, it would go some way to explaining the pragmatic approach to life of the Kroot and their current technological stagnation. The Kroot head is crowned with a great mass of tough, flexible quills that appear to be a part of the Kroot sensory apparatus. These quills contain what seem to be ganglia running from the frontal lobes of the alien's brain and, in this position, would be extremely efficient at receiving and interpreting information on the surrounding environment. The olfactory cavity within the Kroot skull is also enlarged, with multiple sense organs within both it and the mouth. Their eyes are without pupils and generally a milky white. It is likely that they can see further into the infrared end of the spectrum and can sense the body heat generated by their prey. Therefore, the Kroot make excellent trackers and would be extremely difficult to sneak up on. The Kroot generates little in the way of waste, excreting in the form of a pungent, oily sweat that has a variety of properties, depending on what the Kroot has consumed. The most apparent benefits are that this sweat appears to be heat retardant to a degree, has antibiotic properties, and can cause a poorly aimed blow to slide clear. It is suspected that the Kroot can alter the properties of this secretion to leave pheromone trails, mark territories, leave warnings, and even communicate with one another. This may also be some form of control that extends to lower life forms such as birds and animals, as there is evidence to suggest that the Kroot employ empathic pheromones to prevent such creatures from being startled by them and giving away their position in battle. Combined with this method of communication, the Kroot can learn new languages at an astounding rate, matching posture and tone to the sound of foreign words to discern their meaning. Their verbal communication is a mixture of clicks and whistles, possibly reinforced by these pheromone exudations. Shaping. A unique feature of the Kroot is that they evolved by absorbing the traits of other species, a process accomplished by eating their flesh. Due to this, the many Kroot warbands across the galaxy often look radically different. Kroot leaders are known as shapers, They are generally the Kroot with the instinctive ability to recognize desirable or detrimental traits in defeated foes and instruct their kindred on what to eat to suit the task at hand. For instance, a shaper who wants his Kroot to gain muscle mass will take on campaigns against orcs to acquire the right DNA, while extensive feeding on flying predators will allow the Kroot to grow wings. This eating of their foes ties in with the religious beliefs of the Kroot. They believe that when a warrior of any race dies, his warrior spirit should be kept, and the only way to do this is by eating his flesh. The Kroot practice this in their burial customs, in which the body of the deceased is consumed by the kindred. Kroot who prey extensively on a particular species will begin to take the characteristics of that creature. Insentient species such as orcs and humans may also take on cultural aspects of that race as well. A Kroot who has fed on the Dark Eldar, for example, soon begins to show signs of the cunning and intense cruelty the Dark Eldar is known for. The Kroot digestive system is extremely efficient, capable of breaking down almost any organic material into an energy form that can be stored in specialized organs scattered throughout their bodies, called nimnes. Should anything inorganic and indigestible be consumed, the Kroot must regurgitate it, with considerable discomfort. However, the strangest quirk of Kroot digestion is their ability to extract potentially useful strands of their food's DNA. Adeptus mechanicus Gennaeus have long been aware that much of the double helix structure of DNA is in fact blank and used to separate those areas that do contain genetic information. The Kroot have somehow inherited the ability to incorporate useful DNA codes into their own genetic makeup. The process is not an exact science, and there are many examples where it has gone awry, leaving some trapped in evolutionary cul-de-sacs, the Krootox and Kroot hounds being the most visible evidence of this. At some point in their evolutionary history, both subspecies of Kroot fed upon creatures that were possessed of traits they wished to take on, but, in doing so, atrophied their intelligence. These Krootox are now much larger and stronger but become lumbering creatures, more akin to forest-dwelling herbivores than their smaller, more intelligent kin. The Kroot hounds became faster and leaner, but, like the Krootox, their intelligence was reduced, becoming little more than vicious predators. The Kroot use these variants of themselves as laborious, pack animals, mounts, and even as weapons, especially the gargantuan Narlock. There are other variations, such as the smaller, flying Kroot hawk, which is revered by Kroot as a possible evolutionary ancestor, and the serpentine Krootworm, as well as other, more terrifying, creatures. Deep within the forests of Peck, there exist beasts that were once Kroot but have since descended hideous evolutionary paths to become monsters that feed on their kind. Such places have become cursed, and only the bravest or most foolhardy Kroot ever venture within their haunted depths. There are at least 3 species which Kroot are forbidden to eat. Tyranids, which the Shapers have declared inedible, which means something far more horrible to a Kroot than it does to a human, because the Shapers are inherently repulsed by the Tyranids' particular way of changing their genetic makeup. Humans who worship chaos, though this is a bit of a hit-and-miss affair, such cultists being hard to distinguish from the average human. The Tau, due to their role in saving the Kroot's homeworld of Peck from orcs, consuming Tau flesh is a crime that brings swift and deadly retribution from the Shapers. Kroot can taste the taint in the meat of dead gene-stealer hybrids, even if the mutations are not visible. They are unable to effectively shape the living metal of the Necrons, and doing so produces hideous effects, as was demonstrated on Carrick. History and culture. Kroot operates in a clan-based culture across the various homeworlds. These clans are overseen by elders, who dispatch Kroot across the galaxy, often to serve as mercenaries to strengthen the clan via genetic absorption. To gather genetic material from all over the galaxy, the Kroot offer themselves as mercenaries and sell their services to anyone willing to pay them. They travel the galaxy taking limited contracts from both major and minor races and are regularly employed by the Tau. While the contract with the Tau is supposed to be an exclusive one, the Kroot regularly sends out their warspheres to continue their mercenary trade amongst the wider cosmos. The Kroot are renowned as mercenaries, and despite being mistrusted by most in the Imperium, are very faithful to their contractors. They see it as their life's duty to absorb the many genetic traits across the galaxy, and betraying a client would jeopardize this mission. Union with the Tau. To combat the Orcs, who occupied much of the Kroot's core worlds, including their homeworld of Pek, the Kroot agreed to establish an alliance with the Tau Empire in M38 at the behest of Ankaproc. Within a decade of their first battle side by side, known as the War in the Place of Union, the Tau and Kroot had jointly liberated Kroot from the Green Skins. Since then, the Kroot core worlds have fought loyally for the Tau and greater good, provided they receive sufficient payment. The primeval aggression of the Kroot makes them effective shock troopers, though their savagery is viewed with disdain by their Tau allies. However, the habits of the Kroot are still tolerated, so long as they don't eat fallen Tau warriors. The Kroot believe in a variety of gods, including Vork and Gmork, who are credited with creating the universe. First contact with the Imperium. The Kroot's first encounter with the Imperium was during the Damocles Crusade on the world of Sielkel. Troops of the Brimlock 17th Dragoons were in transit to the front lines from their landing zone when they were ambushed by Kroot. The column's forward scouts were eliminated by Kroot Carnivores before they could get a warning off to the regiment following behind. As the main body of the regiment pushed through a narrow forested defile, the Kroot fell on them. 3 Kroot kindred were involved in the attack. Surprise was complete and scores were killed in the opening moments of the ambush. Colonel Constantine Griffin and Commissar Eigerman quickly recovered and held the Imperial line long enough to fight clear of the trap. From then on, the column was continually harried by the Kroot, until Colonel Griffin linked up with the Space Marines of the sides of the Emperor. With the 2 Imperial forces combined, the Kroot faded away, deeming the combined strength too much for confrontation. Technology. Main article, Kroot Armory. Outwardly, the Kroot seems to be a simple pre-industrial society, seemingly incapable of achieving powered flight, much less traveling through space. However, Tau observers on Pek have noted evidence that may point to an industrial base hidden on or even inside of some mountains. It's probable that the Kroot deliberately keep their general level of technology low, using it only for weapons and interstellar travel, to keep their species strong. The primary weapon deployed by the Kroot is a rifle whose design is derived from the fighting staff used by their ancestors. This weapon is fitted with blades on the stock and the end of the barrel, which the Kroot makes deadly use of in close combat. Originally a slug thrower, the weapon was modified by the Tau to fire a charged particle similar to their pulse rifles. This modification quickly became standard for all Kroot. The Kroot rifle is not the only weapon the Kroot makes use of. There is the large Kroot gun, which is tied onto the backs of Krootoks. Next, there is the Kroot hunting rifle. Longer than the Kroot gun, the Kroot hunting rifle has a potentially longer range, but the Kroot must remove the attached blades. Moreover, Kroot mercenaries often bring back weapons from previous employers, further diversifying their armory. Thank you for listening to this entry from the Warhammer 40,000 Lexicanum.